Despite headlines that President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Donald Trump held a very good talk on trade, Chinese manufacturers responded with muted caution. On the factory floors, executives say they remain exhausted by continual policy shifts and disillusioned by Trump's volatility and are waiting for concrete agreements before changing course. As one industry representative put it, no one jumps on Trump's word anymore, and no one will make any long-term decision when it is not a signed agreement. In short, factories are holding their fire. A Chinese tractor factory in Shandong province. After the rare Xi-Trump phone call, factory managers told CCMP they are not rushing to change production plans. Chinese factory managers cite uncertainty and a track record of shifting policies as reasons for their restraint. Many have deliberately delayed major investments and expansion plans until trade signals are clearer. One Hong Kong Business Association official, Winnie Lam, summed up the mood. Manufacturers will keep projects on hold and only proceed when agreements are formalized. In markets, too, analysts saw only a tentative response. China's stock indexes barely budged on news of the call, and the yuan even eased to a 2-year low against peers after the meeting, reflecting lingering skepticism. Why the caution? In short, Trump's unpredictability has bred distrust. On the very eve of the call, Trump had derided Xi as very tough and extremely hard to make a deal with on social media, and during the call he made broad claims about trade progress with no specifics. Observers note that no concrete concessions or signed deals emerged. Natixis economist Gary Ng warned the call does not offer much comfort in cutting tariffs and suggested both sides may simply be buying time rather than finalizing any agreement. Traders in Shanghai noted that Trump's erratic policies and fickleness have undermined confidence. In short, factories in China have learned from past disappointments, previous tariff truces that unraveled, sudden U.S. announcements, etc., and now refuse to bet on informal promises. Policy swings, Trump's statements and tariff decisions have swung back and forth, making outcomes hard to trust. No signed deal. Analysts pointed out the Xi-Trump talk yielded only plans for more discussion, not a formal deal. As one Shanghai investor said, Trump's fickleness has made such talks less and less meaningful to the market. Manufacturers say they will only act on signed agreements. Until then, if a project is on hold, the status remains as is. The Xi-Trump call took place amid a fragile truce in the broader U.S.-China trade war. Trade tensions remain stalled. In mid-May, Washington and Beijing agreed to slash most of their high tariffs for 90 days. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods were cut from 145% to 30%. China likewise lowered its rates to allow talks. Stock markets even rejoiced at the de-escalation, as both sides agreed to suspend or cancel over 90% of the tariffs for 3 months. But experts immediately cautioned that the deal was only temporary. Capital Economics' Mark Williams called it a substantial de-escalation but warned there was no guarantee it would lead to lasting peace. Jens Eskeland of the EU Chamber in China echoed this. Businesses still face great uncertainty and need predictability. A 90-day pause is welcome but far from final. Indeed, key issues remain unresolved. The Chinese readout of the call urged Trump to remove negative measures, that is, U.S. restrictions, while Xi privately warned against U.S. moves on sensitive issues like Taiwan. Rare earth minerals were a central sticking point. Just days before, China's temporary halt on exports of certain rare earth magnets and metals had roiled markets worldwide. During the call, Trump posted that there should no longer be any questions respecting the complexity of rare earth products, but neither side specified a deal. In short, trade tensions are on pause but not solved. Factories note only that things are not getting worse, not that the war is over. Against this backdrop, global supply chains and manufacturing hubs are already repositioning. Companies have been diversifying their production away from China in anticipation of tariffs. Many factories previously moved output to Southeast Asia, especially Vietnam, to sidestep U.S. duties. As Reuters reports, Vietnam was a big winner during the trade war as firms rushed to move production out of China. This boom helped Vietnam's manufacturing output exceed $100 billion in 2023. However, that shift has come under scrutiny in Washington. In recent talks, the U.S. sent a long list of tough requests to Vietnam demanding that its factories cut reliance on Chinese inputs. In other words, American policymakers fear simple rerouting of Chinese-made goods via Vietnam. In practice, Chinese factories now see peers in Vietnam as competitors, but also as the likely locus of future trade if the U.S. presses for imports outside China. Even before the call, many companies were preparing Plan B production sites. Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Malaysia, India, and Mexico have seen inflows of investment as firms hedge U.S.-China risk. Vietnam's manufacturing sector has grown strongly. Output rose about 12.5% in 2022 to about $100.9 billion and reached $102.6 billion in 2023, reflecting this shift. Yet to counter transshipment, the U.S. reportedly told Vietnam to verify that exports truly originate there rather than in China. In sum, the Xi-Trump call won't instantly reverse these supply chain trends. Chinese factories continue watching how trade policy evolves abroad. A major move of capacity back to China is still unlikely as long as tariff risks and political tensions persist. Underpinning all this is the national security dimension of trade. Both countries are explicitly framing key industries as strategic. For example, China's recent rare earth export restrictions targeted minerals used in high-tech and military applications. Reuters notes that halting critical mineral exports disrupts supplies needed by automakers, computer chip manufacturers, and military contractors around the world, signaling Beijing's leverage. Chinese analysts themselves admit the rare earth curbs were retaliation for U.S. tech bans. A scholar at a Chinese think tank called them a short-term form of leverage and likely to harm China much but meant to counter U.S. pressures. Automakers and electronics firms have already warned of shortages and delays due to these controls. Meanwhile, U.S. authorities have escalated their own export controls. In late May, the U.S. Commerce Department ordered a broad crackdown on technology shipments to China. From semiconductor design software and chemicals to certain machine tools and avionics, effectively requiring licenses for goods that support China's chip and aerospace industries. Reuters reports these new curbs specifically appear aimed at choke points to prevent China from getting products necessary for key sectors. Such steps are explicitly justified as protecting U.S. national security. The upshot: both countries are racing to secure critical supply chains. Chinese officials have even added U.S. companies to an unreliable entities list and imposed stricter export licensing on dual-use technology. On the U.S. side, firms are being urged and sometimes required to reshore or friendshore semiconductor and advanced manufacturing. The Xi-Trump call touched on these issues only indirectly, but it takes place in an environment where economic resilience is paramount. Factories in China know that the future terrain is as much about strategic self-sufficiency as about cost. In sum, the June 2025 Xi-Trump call offered hope of thawing tensions, but far more for politics than for Chinese factories. Industrial leaders remain cautious. Without concrete signed deals, they will not pivot quickly. The muted reaction highlights the trench warfare of trade negotiations. Progress is being made only in small steps and only under the microscope of global strategy. The Xi-Trump call is a hopeful sign, but industry experts warn that predictability and signed agreements will ultimately matter more than words. In the meantime, trade tensions, supply chain diversification notably to Vietnam, and strategic security concerns continue to drive business decisions worldwide. Thank you for watching today's video. If you like this content, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.